Hello and welcome to another episode of 4 NPCs Around the Globe. Tonight, because of his recent failures, the novice of Summoner decided to practice his summoning in the woods. But again, something goes wrong. An onlooker somehow affected the spell, and where a wise entity was supposed to come out to the portal to bless the elf with forbidden knowledge of the planes and summoning, a human, a Guildmaster, came out, which is impossible. Humans are not summon creatures, are not entities that can be called upon. Looking at his grimoire, the elf look at any sort of information he can find about his Guildmaster. There must be something about him, and it is. There is. This particular Guildmaster has meddled with many creatures, Fae, and others from the many planes. He has amassed vast knowledge on trading, communities, cultures from many realms beyond the material plane. So, I guess the elf is gonna ask him questions and learn a thing or two tonight. Regarding the innocent onlooker, who knows? Welcome, everybody. Tonight we have Emmanuel Guerrero here. He has a vast experience in role-playing games, in communities, LARP, among other things. So vast that I wouldn't dare to remember it all, or even try to, write it down to tell it to you guys. So I'm gonna leave it up to him to make his introduction.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Introduction. Oh dear. So I am obviously a avid fan of the hobby and role playing. I've been in the space of role playing games, storytelling, and community building around that as well for about 25 plus years now. Started early on as I walked in through to high school, joined student council, and a number of extracurriculars, and those individuals brought me to two great passions: role playing games and anime. And both are still communities that I actively participate or organize for. When it comes to gaming, I think it was within the year of me learning Dungeons and Dragons back in the day. Started up a program at the library, drop in kids and stuff like that with a friend of mine. Moved on from that to the high school clubs, high school groups, university groups, and so forth. But it's really been in the last 10 plus years that things have
Mhm.
been really, really serious than just being a community organizer. I've been a professional storyteller. I've been organizing gameplay, community gameplay now at the store level, at the convention level, traveling as a storyteller, being hired to do corporate gigs, birthdays, bachelor parties, going into schools to teach storytelling and gaming and running Dungeons and Dragons to kids as well. I organize Comic Cons, conventions, anime conventions, and so forth. Though my day job is now, I got headhunted, and I was very lucky. A video game design company asked me because of my history with storytelling to come on in, and I work there now, playing games, testing games, working mostly as a project manager, and planning industry events for game developers. So,
Amazing. You're living the dream. Okay, so well, now you know more about the Guildmaster manual. So having 25 years of experience, from event organization and the basic, running games for friends, and passion, I guess. We're gonna talk about mostly that, creating long-lasting tabletop RPG communities and how to improve the storytelling and the role-playing experience. with Manuel, he has quite a few hobbies, like martial arts. So
Mhm.
there is some skill transfer in that. To be able to narrate combat better, and consider all those knickknacks. People that are not really martial, like elves. We don't know. So yeah, from your perspective, question number one: do you find that that being skilled in some specific category, martial arts, reflect better in acting or role playing?
Um, I would. The very low, easy answer is any sort of life experience and any sort of skill or trait that you can learn or adapt is good when it comes to acting and role playing. If you learn things like martial arts training, archery, like I do Chinese archery. Um, those are going to help you in your combat descriptions. You're going to, like, ever since I started doing my archery, right? Obviously now describing range combats, understanding why the rules make, some sense in some regards and make some departures in others, and you can explain that because these are not, normal everyday elements for people. And then if you learn things such as improv, comedy, storytelling, those are all great elements to bring into your, obviously directly one to one into your role playing, right? Because then you can understand how you can build a story for yourself, how to build a story with others, what elements come together really well, what resonates, what conflicts. But really, uh, good skills that I think uh, every role player should have is um, a keen sense of empathy and a keen awareness of those around. If we watch life and we watch other people and we take that um, information we learn, right, understanding what it's like to be other people, these stories develop the more authentic, the more relatable elements in your role play. It's everyone always says, you role play a part of yourself, um, but at some point, right, you want to role play things outside of that wheelhouse. So, be empathetic, take in other stories, be it people, novels, mythology, and so forth, remix those things. I think good role playing is a combination of these soft skills, and then obviously I can't lie. Like if let's say you go to LARPs and so forth and you have martial training,
Yep.
that's always been that's always a step up. My first LARP that I ever went to was just a combat LARP, no storytell, right? It was just some people doing some combat LARP, and everyone was trained and fought the same way. And I came in as a fencer, so I picked myself a real thin one that had a safe stab, and I don't want to say I walked through, but I had a much easier time because they didn't know how to cope with somebody who had um, a very different sword style, right? It's fun in the time, it's fun for the combat, and then afterwards, the people are like, "How did you learn to parry? How did you learn to do what you did? How did you learn to, get your blade around ours?" And then now you're passing that knowledge, right? And that's always fun.
Okay. Amazing. I made the introduction, and I don't want to like mute madness here. So yeah, yeah. So it's up to you. I will end with my comments.
Okay, well, I do agree with Manuel. Is it okay if I call you Manny? Okay,
Yeah, that's
Nice,
fine.
nice.
that's a perfect. That's
So
okay
many
with Manny.
nicknames I have, so don't worry.
Amazing. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this video today. And yes, definitely, yes, I totally agree. Hard skills that you learn throughout your entire life. If you are really into role playing or storytelling, will actually benefit. There is actually storytelling itself is a skill that should be learned that can help you on your daily basis, even more if you're role playing because you're going to perfect it. Other skills, for in my personal example, I'm a Navy veteran,
Hmm. Well, I don't really think there is much to say on my side. Yes, of course that I agree that any sort of skill you can bring to the table adds to the experience for the whole group. Uh, you know, storytelling skills. For example, for me, it's a lot of cartography studies, of the hobby, um, psychology, how people behave. Yes, or yes, there is an issue if you're bringing something to a table out of character that because of your upbringing, your culture, your career, but your character doesn't. There might be an issue there, but yes, any sort of skill transfer you can bring to the table as a storyteller to make your homebrew or make the campaign more real adds to the game. And yeah, people do learn. For example, there was a herald that was gonna join us tonight that couldn't. Gorgar, the guy is a chemical engineer, and he has a lot of things in his campaign explained by chemistry. So yeah, like don't yeah, yes, that does add up.
In that case, if I can add something, I think the most important skill that you can develop to improve your role playing are basic improv skills. The ability to take what other people give you, be it story, energy, emotion, work with it, build it, and then bring it back just as much back to the people you're doing a story with, either at the table or at a group LARP or something like that. All role play basically is improv, and I think it is the most important skill. Yeah, if you bring map making skills, you're better maps in your game. If you bring martial arts, you got better combat description. You know what I mean? But outside of going out and hard learning skills like storytelling, I think just good sense of improv is the best thing.
Okay, I want to add something on top of that. Before I know that Bios Madness want to add something, but on top of that, how to improve that? How to improve the improv. I know that where you are and where I am in North America, there are some classes in colleges, improv acting in community colleges. So if you have the money and you have the opportunity, and that's something that is appealing to you, look into that. I haven't taken them, but I have seen other people say that that's a good strategy, a good approach. If you're kind of busy and you don't really have much time for practice these things, there is a drinking game that is full on role playing, and it's quite old. You might have seen a movie with the same name, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Do you know of it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, look for the original game. I think it's like 400 years old. It originated on a French court. So yeah, you can have a drinking game that is full on role playing and improvisation. Really fun. Yeah, you might have maybe you have more time. You're in school and college. I think yeah, try what Manny said. You know, gather your group and do some of those
Well,
what if exercises.
we live in the digital age nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of Skillshare sites. There's all sorts. Just watch improv shows, see the games they have, and then play those games with people.
Hmm. Okay, yeah. That's a nice. I think bias pattern is you want to say something?
Yes, of course. The improvisation or the impromptu barrier for most storytellers and players, I believe it's like the most difficult one to break while they are getting used to getting to know the people they are playing with. Mm, there is a TV show that I actually I used to watch a lot, but just for fun. But nowadays, when I start storytelling or creating my own worlds, because I actually like to create my own worlds for um, different stories on Mage the Ascension, that it's my go-to game, is the show that Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's an old show. It was like on 1998 or something, that the guys just received this line like Darth Vader's helmet, and they had to create an entire scene out of just that line.
No.
So actually, leaving the shame apart of knowing that you have to improvise something can actually be beneficial for the story, because you are actually giving the storyteller or the dungeon master more material to create a more compelling session for the entire party.
Okay. Okay. So I think we can go to Q2. This is more on the player side regarding also that skill transfer. How does your martial arts training reflects on your role playing as a player? Because one thing is being a DM and narrating the combat and saying what the NPC does, um, and all that. But as a player, you know, how does that affect your approach to combat when you have to engage, when you have to plan, when you describe your attack?
Well then, as a player only, obviously the
Yep.
element storyteller, but as a player, I have found that it alters the way I go about in combat. If I go back 25 years to my very first character, a half elf, half aquatic elf, half fairy, a halberd wielding ranger, right? I had a very straightforward idea of combat and so forth. But over the years of the training, going to college for policing like I did, um, doing volunteer stuff, all the martial arts and other stuff like that, um, the character started changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be more of environmentalists. And I meant environmentalists in the terms of you take the environment you have around you and turn that into opportunities. A lot of my characters from previous experiences would also start equipping themselves with things that a person in that world would be more likely to have, right? So you know what I mean? There's keeping more regular common items on you because in our lives, we carry a bag, a cell phone. We have our own everyday items, but in that life, they would have their own items, and being able to turn the stuff around you is very important. So my characters became much more strategy minded, much more opportunists in their environment. But when it comes to martial and training and so forth, I definitely now have started playing a lot more range characters since I started practicing archery. Definitely describe the attacks differently. I think a good example is in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons about the rules with range and cover. You have some people who are like, oh, I should be able to make that shot. Oh, I can't, you can't make that shot. And the example is, if a person who had just been training in archery in less than a year at that point, right? I had taken a special class on improving your arrow shots, right? So you have yourself, you have an obstruction, right? And then you have the target, and then you shoot the arrow to bend around the obstruction. I'm like, if an amateur new student of archery could take a special course and learn the basics of it and being able to pull off the basics of it, you would think that a professional elven archer or a professional human soldier who has to, shoot things that are always trying to cover themselves would have learned this skill and perfected it, right? It's their bread and butter, right? So the rules start to make more sense. The rules, you can play with them more. You can describe why they try to push, reality one way or the other. But yeah, like I definitely would describe going in and like, let's say playing one of my soldier tanky types, right? The description of how you would hook the weapon on their shield, pull it down, and so forth. You know what I mean? Try to be more realistic, right? Um, and if you do that, the new player at your table who is not yet comfortable getting right into the details and grit, uh, they see it's more regular, that it's normalized, and then they start bringing whatever their personal experience is, and when they describe their stuff. So, but
Okay.
say it's always easier to explain and share and discuss something you have experience with.
Okay, but like I do have like a small question now.
Yeah,
When you mention like hooking your weapon, which I'm thinking of like a biking axe, which kind of works as a hook.
you can hook a shield with an axe pretty easily,
Yeah.
right?
So if you're hooking an axe to a shield and putting it down, and maybe you have a second axe and you go for the kill.
Even if you have one weapon in one hand, you just grab that shield, right, and try to come in over it, or you try to push them in, you come around the side, right?
Okay, but fifth edition, the rules are so straightforward. So that seems a little bit more complicated.
Not really.
Yeah. So how do you approach that? Because
So
for me, I don't have the knowledge. If a player says, "Hey, I want to do this," maybe they saw it on Vikings or whatever TV show. Um, I've seen.
there's two ways. There's two channels that this can go down, right? One, they want to use the description to then justify what they want to roll, or they roll and fit the description based on that. For example, like you said, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, armor class, AC. AC is a static number. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's binary. You either passed or you didn't pass the attack. However, AC is not a static concept. AC is a combination of your equipment that you're wearing,
Yes.
the way you move and fight, right? The fact that you can be hit by a weapon, but it deflects off of you, or it bites in and takes purchase. It could be that if you're in plate armor, like, yeah, it hit you, but it didn't do enough to hurt you. Like, there's a lot of range. Also, we're not Final Fantasy characters. We don't stand there for 6 seconds, take one swing, and then wait, right? So
I picture it. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like D&D is
Yeah. I
rules
know it.
very simple in that regard, but you have to think that in 6 seconds you're taking one swing, two swings, you take a feint, you're blocking, you're parrying, right? There's more happening in that one roll. Yes, you only roll to attack and it's compared to the number, but doesn't mean that that full emotional, physical description has to be straightforward. You can be like, I roll. Oh, 16, your AC is 18. Okay. So, we're trying to get in. I've only got my dagger because you knocked my other weapon down with your disarm ability last round. So I'm going to grab your shield. I'm going to pull it down, try to get my dagger, into your helmet, but your nose thing deflects it, right? And then you can be like, oh, here's my not success. let me bring the combat towards that non-success description wise.
Okay, okay, I get you now. Like it is, all that margin knowledge improves the description. Because I was imagining something about like trying to get advantages on certain things,
And that's
mechanically.
that's the other channel where you be like, a good example for that is the coup de grace, right? All right, he's unconscious, he's on the floor. I have a knife. Can I not just finish him? The rules say you have to hit his armor, you can do damage and so forth. In real life, it's not easy to cut through somebody's throat or something else like that, or go through the eye necessarily. But the rules need some level of balance, or everyone would always turn combat into knock you over, take 3 kills, right? So that's where you have to push away from reality a little bit, um, because some people are going to be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get right in there. I'm gonna grab his helmet, and now that my hand is like 2 inches away, isn't it really easy for me? Because I'm just gonna drag my dagger up and down his face until it gets through his eye socket." And I'm like, not exactly how this works. But then again, D&D or any role-playing game comes in versions, comes in iterations. New errata, new home rules become new rules, next gen rule systems. Uh, if you look at fifth edition rogues, uh, before they had the cunning action of dash, disengage, and dodge, right? But now they have the steady aim ability. Well, the steady aim gives you advantage. Well, it doesn't have to be just steady aim, right? It doesn't have to be just the aiming. You can use that as a mechanic, but to describe the fact that your friend has missed his attack, but then he grabbed the one guy's left arm,
Mhm.
pulled it up. Now he's holding him up, Goku style in Dragon Ball. Just hold the opponent, shoot me now, right? I'll take the arrow with the bad guy, right? So you can use mechanics to try something. An unpopular opinion, I very much had a great positive experience with fourth edition D&D because all those action
Okay,
abilities.
okay, okay. We're gonna end this here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't knew this.
No, but fourth edition
I'm kidding. I'm
was
kidding.
really good fluff descriptions on a lot of the attacks. So I had very successful tables for many years, bringing in lots of new people, right? But what it was is we could go whole sessions with doing combat but not rolling anything, because it was just like, oh, I'm going to use my my ray of frost, but I'm going to target the pool of water at his feet to freeze it that he's standing in. So I'm like, okay, you're not attacking him, and you use because all these abilities had really good descriptors, like
Yeah.
fluff descriptors. People started going to that as role play, and I was successful at having a table of, I think it was like at one point 10 players. No one wanted, or not wanted, nobody needed to roll dice because we were able to, go through combat descriptively using these abilities beyond what their mechanics allowed for. And that's
Okay.
something when people are like, fourth edition didn't allow role play.
Hey,
I'm like,
that's a first. I've never heard
yes,
that
video
before.
game on paper, but it is still how you treat your rules.
Never heard that
I do
before. That's a first.
I do have a question, and it goes along with the previous topic that we mentioned, like for example, improvisation. Uh, on what moment do you think that the rules for a storyteller or a dungeon master become chains for those type of actions that have to do with skill transferring something or seeing different things from a different perspective instead of doing the traditional I use a fireball and just throw it at the bad guy. So at what point is it, or what advice do you give to those guys that listen, don't don't follow the rule on this one, try this instead?
All right, I don't advocate the sake of breaking rules just for the improv, but then again, I also don't say don't um don't follow the rules to the point where you kill your story, and don't kill your story just to follow the rules. It's but what I say is do what the group agrees, and agree on what feels right for you and your group before you play. right? Or if something new, some sort of new friction point is coming up during your play, you need to take a moment to stop, address that, say, is this something the group wants to adopt? Is this a new direction? Is this a correction in our previous thought? Right? And then keep going. So when you're transferring skills in, does the group want and appreciate skill transfer to a level that's, beyond just cursory? Do they want you to stop and say, hey, this is my ability to navigate using the stars? I happen to be playing a star druid, right? Could I describe, like, how can I have that? And the DMs probably, in my opinion, would be like, I love it. You've got the natural skill that your character does. Nobody else does. We're going to learn something, right? But at the same time, you don't. Basically, you can have fun within the rules. You can have fun bending the rules. If the fun comes from breaking the rules because it no longer is the fun at the table, find the rule that you agree to and stay to that. I always say, like, you can break any rule, and things don't have to be necessarily balanced. I know that's a weird way to say it. It doesn't have to be balanced against the rules. They need to be balanced against each other. So in this regard, people are like, oh, you just can't give somebody at low level a really cool magic item. And I'm like, well, if everybody follows the same rule or has something similar, then we're back all on the same plateau. Maybe magic item is a bad example, but I'm just like, if you're going to have one person who has, can take a short rest in 10 minutes as a home rule, if everybody has that same ability, then everyone's back on, the same level. No one's more broken than the other. But yeah, rules are there to guide you to the point where you are comfortable editing the rules to what's good for you and your friends. I think that's probably a better way to phrase it.
Okay.
Right? And if you never need to bend the rules or edit rules to try something new, you don't need to. But if suddenly you're like, I want to try new things, I think that's a good thing, and I do encourage you trying new rule combinations, because that is how you make the jump from one system to the next system, to the next system, to the next system. And I always have a practice where, with whatever groups I have, after a while, I get them to stop whatever game system we're playing, rotate for a week or two, try a new one, rotate for a week or two, try a new one, because I always want them to be growing what they think. I don't want people getting comfortable in the concept of what role playing is. Role playing is a lot of things to a lot of people. So
I like that. I like that phrase. Not
Yeah,
getting
because
people not getting comfortable in what role playing is.
and I don't
yeah,
mean not comfortable as in like leaving your comfort zone. I mean explore, learn, always see if there's something that makes you happier.
Yeah, to keep
because
to keep the concept mutable
Yeah.
or liquid. I think liquid is a better.
Be like water.
Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Be like water, my friend. Because it was happening to a group that I was playing with. We're playing Ravenloft, Curse of Strahd.
I know.
Amazing setting.
Yeah. What was it with
Amazing.
Hackerman?
Yeah,
With
yeah, yeah,
Hackerman? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
Amazing setting.
I was there. I played with them twice before I moved here. Yeah. I know those guys.
I loved the setting because I read about it. Curse of Strahd, Ravenloft, amazing setting. I loved it. But the thing is that during the session, if we wanted to try something new, he was just like, "No, no, you cannot do that." You're like, "Why? Just let us do it and see what happens. If at some point we need to go back on track, you can force us because you are the dungeon master. But if we don't want to follow this road, but we want to go over here because it's funny. I mean, why are you going to restrict us?"
Man, Curse of Strahd has so many examples of groups running into that. Curse of Strahd had a few main threads you could go through, and I always hear it's either Storm
Okay.
King, like out of the
Okay.
public
Wait. No.
material,
Just for
Storm King
clarification. Just for
Thunder.
clarification. This guy was he bought like almost all the 80s book and the 90s book, like all the Curse of
So he was
Strahd.
trying to enrich and keep all the old world lore from Ravenloft.
Yeah, no, because he had those books and he moved away and he gave them to a friend and that friend moved away and he gave them to another people to other person and like they got lost. Like I think they were given to a foundation,
Yeah.
which is super funny when you think about it in the South American context. Like some foundation in a super Christian country has like a bunch of freaking cards of draft books. But
You know
yeah,
what? I love it. I approve because in high school I went to my local public library that owned copies of D&D Second Edition, and that was where I read my first rules. In between some aisles of shelves in the public library, sitting there on the ground, borrowing the book. You can see my name on the tag in the back of the book over and over and over again. No one else taking it out currently.
yeah. So he pretty much ordered like a bunch of eBay bought secondhand Ravenloft big pack.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm still saying basically Curse of Strahd. A lot of people are like, well, this is the story. Strahd is like this. And they get very easily into the idea that this is what Strahd should be. And I've always come across groups that never follow what the story thinks you're going to do. Right? Uh, Heck, when I played through Curse of Strahd, it definitely didn't go the way that most people would think. Because what did we end up? I think by the end we were flying on our griffins through the window at Strahd, bringing daylight with us. And I had a decanter of endless water. We tackled him down and just drowned him in water damage. We didn't fight him. We just tackled him and drowned him in water damage. And it was not what the DM expected the fight to go as at all. Then again, the DM didn't expect us to get griffins either. So
No, I think I read about a group that end up like going with Strat to solve mysteries. I have no idea how, but yeah, like
but see, I would listen to that. I would want to see Detective Strahd and the Scooby Gang.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But see, that's what my question was, because I was actually enjoying the setting, and we were constantly being restricted
Oh
by the
wait,
rules of the
wait,
game.
wait. Let me make a joke. Let me make a joke here. Strat milk and cookies for everybody. No, you get it? No, you don't get it? Bad milk and cookies for everybody. But what? No.
No.
Yeah, is this like
Wah,
no?
wah, wah,
No.
wah.
I'm gonna send you a video. You're gonna understand it.
Send me the video. Send me the video.
Batman with the Scooby Gang. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel that people getting too much into the rules can actually take fun out of some game, especially if you have people who is experienced, long time experience in playing games that are mainly improvisations. Like my case, Mage the Ascension, where the book says only your imagination is the real rule. That's the golden rule for Mage Ascension. So it is like, okay, so I'm a mage in my world, and I have these spheres that I can actually modify anything around me. So I get to D&D Curse of Strahd, and I'm immediately squared to you move here because I said so. You move here and here and here. No, you cannot go that way because the story doesn't allow you to.
See, I feel in your case it was less that your imagination was being put into a frame, and more that the storyteller in that instance and in that particular group was um, underprepared, hesitant, not comfortable with the idea of allowing you to, color outside the line and then come back in, right? Because when you work with published material and it's a set module or a hardcover, people are going to be like, well, this is what they gave us. This is what we should do, right? But you should feel empowered and allowed to be like, oh, that they cleared the cave, the cave in that choked off this hallway. There's nothing past that in the map. well, how about I just give them a few more rooms and so forth, because they took the time to dig out the those stones to see what's beyond that passage. Well, do it, because you can always bring them back. It's very easy to allow them to explore what they want and then bring them around. As a really cheesy trick, you just give them like a false logic loop, right? Or
Yep.
logic trick where it's just like, here's your three options, right? You can go east, you can go north, you can go west. They're all going to take you to the same city eventually, because that's where I'll put the city then, at whatever choice you make. It's like in the video games. You can take the nice routes, you can take the compassionate, the smart, you can answer any of the witty combinations, but they're always going to give you the same voice line. So,
Yeah, the,
Yeah.
the illusion of choice.
illusion of choice. Yes, that's the thing.
Okay.
But don't do it too much, because you do want your players to have choice.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, for sure. Okay, so I think like, going to the main course now, like expectation and background. Well, if this is your first video, the whole purpose of this series is pretty much to build the narrative more globally around TTRPGs. We are a group from South America, and we do feel like our context is really underexplored, and our stories are not really communicated because the market is not really appealing for the big brands. And we are trying to bring people from different contexts, different countries, and build a really interconnected narrative. That's why we have Manny here. That's why we have our previous guests from Mexico and Australia. So now regarding North America, Canada especially, which is your case, from your perspective, how do players in Canada, especially in your area, approach or get to know RPGs? What are their expectations? What were and how does that compare to our expectations? You know.
Fair enough. So this is probably why you chose to talk to me in the first place. But I do a lot of community organizing, and as such, this question is directly at the heart of what I've done for the last 10 plus years. Um, I find now I am located in Ontario in Canada, and I can speak to my region, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what I have found, and of course in my travels and so forth to the States and beyond to the north and so forth, but I have found in our area that players who are interested and looking will go one of two ways, or one of three ways. They go traditional, where they talk to their friends, they discover it as a friend group, or somebody's interested and they bring it to their friend group, and they play amongst there, right? That's your home group.
Yeah.
But I do find that there is a much bigger wave of people now where they have that interest because they've seen something online, the digital approach, right? They've seen some content, they've seen some show, they've seen some YouTube channel, and they've seen something in pop culture, and they then hunt it down and they go through the digital means,
Yeah, that,
right?
that thing is gonna grow with the whole series that Wizards are gonna create. Critical Role. Well, Darkness just announced
Yeah.
they're gonna do some
There's
vampire thing.
all these custom things, all these content creators.
Yeah, things are gonna keep growing their way.
Oh yeah, but I find that the most common is the third thing, where somebody's interested and then they hunt down their a group that has the same interest, and you hunt it down either by finding some community online or finding your local community. So when it comes to your local community, you're typically going into your game stores, you're going to your conventions, or online, you're going to a Discord group, a Facebook group, looking for stuff like that. And then you meet like-minded individuals. So basically, that approach of finding like-minded individuals is, and then you go out and find the community, is being a lot faster than, just being like, hey, I saw this game on the shelf. You want to try it? And you're just talking amongst your personal friends. You will probably more likely now turn to your friend and like, hey, I'm interested in this, and then you go and you also find that community as a group together. So in my experience, lots of people coming to conventions for the first time specifically to try gaming, tabletops and stuff like that. A lot of times, because I worked at one store and then I organized role-playing games in, like, I think it was at one point I was running RPGs at 5 stores and then conventions as well. So yeah, five stores at a time. It was a busy week. I was
Oh,
5 nights a week. So but yeah, people are always going to that, and then through your local gaming store, through that local convention, or traveling to that destination, you find these like-minded people, and then you stay with them. Um,
okay, but regarding now,
Summarize it a little more. Basically, go find that like-minded individual, and then you have that person that knows them a little bit more, introduce you and bring you along on that trip. That seems to be the thing. You go and you find the community, you find the expert, you look for the expert, or you look for somebody who knows more. Expectations.
yeah, expectations.
Expectations. Now, this is where you have a divergence, where if they see things online or on pop culture, they get that tint to the lens, where they then think that's what RPGs are. But then if you discover it through a gaming store or convention or through practical means, right, they have a more also going to be, through the lens of whatever that one experience was, but it'll be a different lens than what pop culture, because pop culture doesn't always, capture the true essence, the friendliness, the camaraderie, or that this hobby has. Typically, pop culture has a lot of what the tabletop gaming is, to be part of a joke, the butt of a joke, or a comical add-on to somebody's character quirks,
Yeah.
right? I think Stranger Things, having D&D be a tool for the kids to understand the problems they have by referencing their game, was a pretty nice approach, because it wasn't a joke, it wasn't a quirk. You know what I mean? It was how kids related to the world through this medium.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
To me, that's weird because at least I mean I don't know which is the actual like the status of that, but I do feel or I expect the people behind all these shows to be some geeky in some kind of way. Like they have played the games and maybe they even play the games now. But
Sometimes
yeah,
you find out some of the writers have no idea,
huh?
but
Okay, I guess that explains it because to me it's like okay, you play the game. Why are you portraying the game in this manner? But yeah, I mean that's a question
I
that
think
I've always gotten the question.
I think the most this question, though, I specifically tried to get away from this element I'm about to get into for the sake of the question. But I think this question always, when people talk about it and ask about it, what they get towards is, why is the game I'm playing in not more like Critical Role
The
or
critical role effect. Or was it the
or
Mad Mercer effect? What was the name of that thing? They name it. It has a name.
oh yeah, I'm not even going to say it, because it is they expect that level of game, and some people say it is good to have an expectation of playing a good solid game. Other people will be like, it is impossible to live up to that. They are not professional actors, voice actors. The storyteller doesn't have uh, you know all the tools and experience that Matt Mercer does, right?
No.
So you need to understand that when you play, you are playing, your friends are playing, you are playing the same game, but you can only bring the uniqueness that is you, right? If you had grabbed the same individuals in a lot of these pop culture content creating shows, right? They brought what made them unique,
Yeah.
their acting skills, their improv. Going back to the first question, the things that make you good at role playing, they were good professionally at. So yeah, their role playing is going to be good if captured on video.
No, I get that. For example, this guy, Sam Riegel, like I believe it was his first game. Like, he was probably like, okay, I'm gonna try this thing, and he's a good role player because he did his job as an actor. So, I mean, can I do that? No. Can you do that? Maybe no. But like, if you do want to like maybe learn voice acting and learn accents, maybe not accents. Some people consider that offensive. Trying to learn how to do deep voices or like go up and have a falsetto and do a female voice as a DM. Yeah, like do learn those things.
Yeah. Now, yeah, I don't know. It's always so hard talking about Critical Role's effect because Critical Role, huge beneficial effect, and then you get this very vocal group that says it also raises expectations beyond achievable limits,
Have
right?
have
But
expectations on the story, not on the acting, not on the DM. Like they know the rules, they tell a good story. You role play the best you can. Go home happy. That's all.
yeah, and I will say, as a person that's had the privilege of meeting and chatting, and pulling a prank on my friends with Matt Mercer,
Yeah,
he's
that's
an
a funny story.
amazing, wonderful person. Um, but yeah, I feel sometimes people put this sort of expectation out there. It's the same thing when you go anywhere else, right? You look at sports players. You're like, why is this sports player not as good as this other sports player? Well, he's not that guy, right?
Yeah.
So you can't expect to perform like your favorite sports person. You didn't spend years of training and learning and injuries and then learning not to injure yourself again. You know what I mean? So, but role playing is fun, but it is also a skill that you can work. Like you don't need to work on it, but if you do, you will be rewarded.
Yeah. Okay, I get it.
But yeah, the expectations I find in our local area, going back to the original question here, is there's a very big trend for people to go out and find the community now, be it because of digital or in person. Um, of course, there will always be your traditional people who are like, hey, I found dad's old box of games in the attic. What is this? Now, I also have to admit, I have a very different view and bias because I was a central person. I was that sort of pillar individual where a lot of people would come and ask me. Every few days, I'm getting some mom, I'm getting some dad, I'm getting somebody saying, hey, my niece, my nephew, my kid is interested. Where do I go? What's the Facebook groups and so forth? And I get them in my emails, my Facebooks, and so forth. Stores recommend or reference people towards me to help them find games and so forth. But yeah, I and also in my community, we break a lot of social expectations or a lot of trends where the female population, like that stupid stereotype that there's not a lot of girls in gaming.
Yeah.
There's like 50% of the gaming community that I work with are girls, right? Um,
It has grown. If I recall correctly, because I did saw some numbers by Wizards, um, 2002 or something like that was like 15%, like something like that.
but it's just going up.
Yeah, no, that was 2002. I did fill out something by 2018. It was around nearly 40% or 40 something,
Mhm.
and that was like 3 4 years ago. So yeah,
Yeah, and I do acknowledge that I am very lucky and privileged to have an environment where representation is very balanced, right? A very large female population of gamers are very active, and a very large LGBT
Q plus,
of the what's that?
Q plus. I
Q
thought that.
plus, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm in my head making sure. I'm like, what's the acronym? Oh my goodness. I yeah, the we have a huge amount of representation. We have a lot of strong individuals from that community who are vocal, who also be like, hey, you know what I mean? We want games to have these concepts, these ideas, and we have people to provide that sort of place and safety. And it's great. I do live in a city that has a really good community of good representation and balance, and I know other organizers like me, just a few cities over, they have a harder time with that sometimes. So
Okay. You know, that's okay. My comment regarding expectations. I like really serious games. I might crack a joke or two, but I really like, down to the game kind of thing. Not like funny, jokey, happy kind of game. Like if I want to go fantasy, you know, I'm going like full on Lord of the Rings kind of deal. There are people that don't like that. I've seen like many people, approach this as, I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna make jokes, So there are, DMs like me who are going to go for more serious things, and yeah, I am going to, tell that to my players. The mood of my games is dependent on my narrative and how I will behave on the table. If I am all funny and joking, my players are gonna do that. If I am more serious, so do consider that. If you're looking for a more serious game, look for a DM that is like that. If there is none, well, you have to be at the end. If you like funny games, you're gonna find games for that.
I will
So
say DMs have a sort of pattern they stick to, a behavior, but you do find DMs who will play, different elements, right? Because, for example, and using yourself is not the great example, but for myself, yes, everybody knows me for D&D, but I'm also well known for doing a lot of World of Darkness stuff. So with
yeah,
my D&D, I've got, very funny campaigns, but I also have a lot of the stuff that I like to do are long-term, multiple group games. So it's one game's homebrew setting, but I have like 5 tables in the stable that play, and what one group does affects the other group, right? So it's a living world sort of scenario that's been going on for like 10 years, right? But I also do that in World of Darkness. But World of Darkness is very serious, very
yeah, DTC, down to cry.
downtown to cry.
Down to cry.
Dark, dark and gritty.
Because I do a homebrew universe where it's inspired by World of Darkness, and I love the mechanics, so I use the mechanics. But it's also my world is inspired by my nightmares and my post traumatic stress disorder and real life problems that I've experienced and so forth. So a lot of those players who participate in that game, they go in fully aware that we're going dark, we're going violent, we're going gory, we're going very hard emotional questions. You know what I mean? Do I save this person? Do I let this PC die? You know what I mean? Like lethality is up. Ethical questions will be challenged, right? You can get what you need, but you have to do something, that your character may not. Like it's real horror survival, right? Um, I've had characters who are players who would be like, I don't like any of this. I think at this point a human would like just break down, and then he had his character break down and just offed himself, right? And the player's like, yeah, there was my character. I don't think had the emotional ability to cope between the murder portal or going out to the creatures outside, right? So yeah, I always liked horror survival, lots of zombie stuff, and but it's a very different game. That is, and then you turn around and then you can do lasers and feelings where it's all comedy, haha, rocket ship, ray guns, and so forth. But it depends. You do have a point where some DMs will have a place that they're comfortable at, right? And that's good because it means you can expect where that game will be. And if you're looking for something different, see first if the DM will challenge themselves before, or then go look for other DMs.
Yeah, okay. I do have a small question, but if Bias Madness has any sort of comment, like now is the time.
Um, From my experience, I approached role playing games by first playing Magic the Gathering. I believe you have met several people that pretty much have gone down the same road as I have. So this the first DM that I played with, he told me, look, Magic the Gathering is a card game for Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, what? He just put it that way so that I can just like project those settings into a narrative, because Magic the Gathering has this pretty art of different locations and all that stuff. So just try, when he was playing with me for the first time, introducing role playing games, he was just doing a small session for 3 people. He was actually really good, but it was just like 2 sessions, so it wasn't that long or enjoyable because I had to just leave the town. He was using the cards. He says, you are walking down this path on this beautiful plain where you see the wheat, crops and everything, the small river go flowing. So we were picturing ourselves within the card.
Hmm.
So that was the
Huh?
strategy he used to capture some of us, because all the 3 of us were Magic players.
And now look
Uh,
to nowadays, where Magic the Gathering has actual D&D rules, actual D&D
yeah.
books. And now, I'm not sure if you're aware with the new announcement, but I'm pretty sure I heard recently that the next box set, or one of the next box sets coming for Magic the Gathering, is D&D Forgotten Realms.
Ooh.
Nice.
So it will be Forgotten Realms based, and it's, I think somebody said it was replacing the core set for
I,
that year. So
Okay, they might be getting me back.
because I learned to
That's
play
nice.
Magic the Gathering, obviously, right as it started, because it was around when I was learning D&D,
Oh my
and
god, free tokens. Can I cut them? Yeah, free tokens. Holy.
I had a deck built around banding, and I knew how to use it. Right, I knew what banding was. Nobody knows what that mechanic is, right? But then again, Magic has also changed over the years. But I remember Magic Gathering in the very beginning had that element, right? You are this grand character doing this grand work, doing grand spells from creatures and stuff like that. So yeah, it lent heavy into similar concepts of D&D, and it was a lot of fun. And I applaud the DM from saying, look at this common thread of interest that you have. Let me weave this into a good way to introduce you and onboard you to this other level of fantasy.
Yeah. So it was an amazing experience, and that was when I got hooked up with role playing games. But the thing that I seen the most here in our country is that people is lean towards the weeb aspect of life. So it's anime and all that. So um, the most of the conventions that we have here in Colombia, it's just based around anime. There is only like a couple at the year before all this pandemic that were like a Comic Con, and it's called Sofa here in Bogota, that where you can actually find LARPing, role playing game tables. So it doesn't have that much of a showcase
Yes,
as,
so
for
Sapa
example, in
had
Canada.
a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so it doesn't have that much of a showcase, and we actually want to try to build more around that. So just have have this like look, listen, the role playing games are not for, because I've met a lot of people who say no, that's for nerds. I said no, it is not. It's, I mean, it's a fun way to actually develop and have your brain working, because you have to read, you have to improvise, you have to create, you have to craft things in game. So you're
I
actually
would say
constantly working.
I would say it's almost impossible to find somebody who's not played a role playing game without them knowing, or with likely without them knowing. So everybody, as people, will grow up playing some form of imagination,
Yeah.
creating stories and being other characters. That is role playing. They may not have dice, they may not have formal rules, but they have created some rules for themselves. Even if it's just you running around with a blanket and you've got a cape, right, and you're Superman, like you've put some rules in your head. What we are just doing is a
Mech-
evolution of that game.
yeah,
We have written
mechanizing.
down the rules to agree on. We have decided what it is we're going to imagine about, and then continue to play imagination around the table.
Okay. I do have okay. I did have a small question because you said the different approaches people have to play games. Like many people go to stores, which is pretty much how um, the community in the city that David is, and I used to live at, um, developed from a store. Maybe the capital was different because they had pretty much everything come to them over like 30 years before the rest of the country. So, but yeah, it's pretty much you have stores, and we know there are like little clusters of people that play alone. Group of friends. So, my question: you have like 25 years doing this. How do you engage those small groups and bring them into the community?
In the role of a community organizer, it is getting your voice and reach out. I try to I try to live in the spaces that let me reach out to these people. Facebook, Discord, posters at your local library, posters at your local stores, at your local cafes. You know what I mean? Places that people would be gathering to enjoy these sort of activities. Promote, bring them on board, get them into a single community, have them talk to their friends. Um, but it's really hard if you're the only person. You need the community to be willing to try to speak up and then listen to who else is speaking up somewhere else in your city. Reach out to each other, right? Um,
Okay.
no matter how hard I do what I want to try to get a community going, if I don't have locations, voices, and play people to echo that message, it's not going to go anywhere, right? So, but to bring in those people, you want and you need to give time. Time is the magic ingredient, right? Um, you need the knowledge that there is a place to gather and people to speak to spread out throughout the community. And that will take time. Sometimes it might take, hey, look what I found on Facebook. You share that feed, it's really fast. Or one sibling plays, loves it, but now is off to college, and the younger sibling found those books, and they're like, "Hey, what do I do?" Well, look up my friend this person, and you know what I mean. See if anybody's still running the game, right?
All right.
You and that's the thing. We are benefiting right now in 2020, 2019, 2018, 2021 with D&D being so popular and so big because all these years more and more people loved it, more and more people getting bigger. And it's not D&D. D&D is not just role playing, right? I mean role playing all the game systems that there is. There's so much. And there's also, there's mainstream role playing system, which are the big systems that you always hear about: Pathfinder, D&D, World of Darkness,
More
Fate.
forward, yeah.
But there's also a huge custom community being built around indie games with more heavy emphasis on improv and story building and free form and diceless and um, challenging, concepts that other mainstream games have taken for granted for years. So the community is like a snowball, right? It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger the more snow there is to roll in.
Okay. Um, Take you for. This is to build a little bit of interaction between how are things in Latin American, how are things in North America, how you play with Latin American people, and how was your experience with that. And we're also gonna tell you how has been our experience with North American people?
Yeah. So, yeah, when you told me about this question, have I played with Latin American people? I have, and this is an easy answer, and maybe too easy, maybe too much of a cop out, but people with this background, right? Um, Obviously, I'm Spanish, Japanese. Actually, not obvious. I don't look like either, but I have that background as well. But I can see it more clearly than some of my friends. When playing with Latin American individuals, they are more impassioned when it comes to this. They have the hobby. They love what they do. They put more love and more passion into how they say things, why they say things, uh, the game, their characters. But I find that to be a true statement. And this is why I say it's a cop out. It's a true statement. I just find people of the Latin American culture are already more emotionally expressive, more open, more um, energetic, right, than North Americans. I find that if I play at a table with these mixed cultures, that you will find that most of the time, cultures that are similar to Latin American cultures, the role player is going to be more comfortable in this space than someone who comes from you know, no, like a more, I don't know, how do you phrase this, like a sort of background where they're more hesitant to share their thoughts and feelings, right? So something a little more reserved.
Yeah, I think that's the word. A more reserved background.
Yeah. And I think it's a fair statement to say that cultures with that Latin American background are on average, uh, are more expressive, are more emotionally expressive, are also just, I think the nature of our cultures, you know what I mean? Bigger families, being close to your siblings, you know what I mean? You're more used to people and so forth, so it just makes you more comfortable in a way. So
Yeah, I get what you mean. And it's ironic because South America and Central America doesn't really have that indoor culture, like because of the weather. Like you have your outdoor culture in summer and you have your indoor activities in winter and fall. And so I guess maybe because of that, games are not really popular or that popular in South America, which is a little bit true. We have that boon, so to speak. I get what you mean.
it's also very difficult to uh, tackle the concept of the cultural influence.
Yeah.
If most of the time when we play these games, we are dealing with individuals, and individuals are not a representation of a culture.
No,
You
I
need,
know.
you need a large body base, or a large number of people of the same culture to show the same behavior before you can say. But you are right. Um, there are trends in cultures that we can talk about, but it's very hard because individuals rarely give justice to that sort of lens, right? Like I said, um, being of a Spanish background, right? I am also, uh, as an individual, louder, more emotionally expressive, more open with my thoughts and feelings and things like that than some of my more straightly North American cultured friends.
No, I
Where
get for sure. For example, they, Bios Madness can, speak of this. I am fully an introvert person. If you go to South America and you see me in a context, you're like, okay, this guy is quiet. This guy, is really introverted.
this is true,
But
yeah,
yeah. But if you see me in college, everybody that I studied with, and they would say like, okay, you are fully extroverted, always talking, always saying things, cracking jokes. I was like, what?
No, I can totally understand that, because if you ask anybody in my area, they're going to be like, "Who is Manuel? Tell me something about him." They're all going to tell you extrovert, loud, person in the middle of the room when they walk in. You know what I mean? All these things. But by nature, I'm a quiet introvert. But by the nature of also being Spanish and family, my siblings, you know what I mean? Just being more comfortable with people.
Yeah,
It's just, yeah, it's a different experience when
yeah,
I'm,
yeah. The lens change.
yeah. So, but culturally, I have to admit, when playing with people of the Latin American background, in my experience, they have always just been more, more energy. They had more energy, right? And this is a broad stroke, of course, right? Because I've met some really into the hobby individuals that fly in the face of their background culture completely. So,
No, for
right?
sure. I have played with many people from Latin America, from Chile to Mexico. But my best player is North American. The best players I've had is North American.
In our pre-conversation before we got on this and got into the cameras weeks ago, as we were talking, we also talked about how the market changes things, right?
Yeah,
The culture influences how the gaming, but also the market and all that. The cultures influence for many reasons. And something you said that in your Colombia,
yeah.
in your area, you found that you had limited opportunities to go out and find people to play games, the conventions, the different LARPs and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. So just for clarification, because I don't know if I mentioned that, and also for the people, just watching the video, if you haven't watched the previous one, we mentioned that there. The thing with Colombia is that the capital is at the center, so everything, every international thing that comes in the country goes to the mountain lords, and they keep it. They don't share it. So all the other cities, and I'm kind of quoting, I guess we had a university class, the rest of the country feels 30 years behind in culture.
Okay.
Somebody from the capital said that, running a business from the capital to the city we were at, just like, okay, you know what? I came here, this city feels like the capital in the 80s to me. How people behave, how people think. So yeah,
Okay, fair enough. But what I was trying to say is supply lines, chains, like you guys tend to like games in a certain way, right? And then we had this big conversation about, well, in North America, it's really easy to get your hands on more than just the mainstream gaming systems, more than just Pathfinder, D&D, and other stuff like that. But in
yeah,
South America, you're going to struggle because not everything makes it down there, which then changes because
yeah,
your views and opinions and how you interact with something changes into how much of exposure, right? So if we have lots of exposure here, yeah, our communities are going to adopt new ways to play, new ways to do things, new expectations. But if it's so much harder to bring books and rules and so forth, or the things that you guys would be interested in, whatever fandom it is, if it's harder to get there, then or make there, then you know what I mean. It's going to take longer for it to spread.
yeah. Beyond accessibility, which is what you just mentioned, it's like three factor exposure, which you already mentioned. I am not going to talk about that. There is the money issue because the books have certain price based on North American economy or European economy, where the South American money or coin is not as strong. So buying a book is more of a higher percentage of, say, a minimum wage. So
Yeah,
it costs
it
more.
was a higher percentage of your monthly budget.
And the other thing, the final one, which I think is the most really critical, is the consumption partner. Because of that, money issue, South American people don't change things as much. The consumerism or of the capitalist system is not as ingrained, so people will just keep things if they are working or they're gonna fix the things that broke down. It's not like, oh, it's a new year, so I have to get a new phone and I change my phone every year. No, you're gonna change your phone when it breaks down. So like you're gonna have a phone for 7 years until you really need a new one.
Mm.
So once a new edition comes out, you're like, I mean, my books are okay. They are not broken down. I like the game. I don't need new books.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a fair statement.
Yeah, yeah. In North America, okay, sixth edition is out. I'm gonna check it out. But
But
that being said, I know that it can go the other way around, which happened with the second edition or the second game, Chronicles of Darkness. People didn't like the edition. They're like, no, I'm gonna go with the previous one. It didn't have the kick. And also happened with like fourth edition. You might have liked it, but the edition was. So yeah, but in South America, it is always like that.
yeah, and then you have the option to buy PDF files, but it is not the same. I mean, you want to have the physical copy, and the latest example that I have, because the last book that I bought for role playing game, it was the fifth edition of Vampire the Masquerade,
Mm.
and it was a hell of an ordeal because it was,
Produced in Britain, yeah.
yeah, it was
I,
produced by Modifus in London, I believe, and the British pound is way too expensive compared to the Colombian peso. So we actually we ended up splitting the deluxe edition between three people. So you see how it's
Oh
a
no,
real
no,
issue.
that's
It turns out pretty bad. And the next thing that we have to a Spanish translation is this Spanish guy, people from it's called No Solo Roll, I believe. They're in charge of Spanish translation, but they are based on Spain. So we are handling also not only British pound but euros. So we are always on the downside, and that's where we're like, yeah, we cannot access to physical thing because collecting a book is always nice. So instead, we have to just opt for PDFs, which are not that fun.
yeah.
okay.
No, talking supply lines, talking about supplies getting to South America is its own whole other interview and conversation, right? Because I've had conversations in like going back to martial arts and so forth. So back before the pandemic and all, we used to get
Totally.
masters from South America coming down every few months to do our itinerants, and they would come from Brazil, they would come from Argentina, they would come from different places, but I've had one or two masters who were into D&D, and I had this very, very specific conversation about how difficult it is, even in Brazil, to be buying D&D books and supplies because A, they don't all make it down there, just a handful of core items. Um, the cost is so much different compared to what the book will be versus your monthly income and so forth. That's why we specifically hit up the store one night and we bought a whole bunch of supplies because it would be so much easier with through me my discount that I had locally and so forth, and then just bring it back to share, right? So, but no, I was very surprised to find out that here where I would consider, okay, I'm gonna buy this $40 Canadian item, and for him it would be equivalent in the hundreds because of all the middlemen and transfer and other stuff, right? So super crazy, super crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so going forward, small, small question, what can one group, North American role players, can learn from the others? So what can we learn as South American people from, North American role players, and what can we teach North American?
So I know we touched base a little bit on this before,
Yep.
but looking at my history over the years with individuals who are then influenced by their, culture as a person in their role playing, it would be very interesting and very cool if more people felt comfortable in their skins to be impassionate, or sorry, to be impassioned about what they're doing and what they love. You know what I mean? Like, they like it, but they're being quiet and shy about it at the table, right? You can you can be happy, you can be passionate, you can be louder, you can be, um, more open with your thoughts and feelings about the gaming hobby and about how it makes you feel, right? You always, especially in very impactful games, should talk about the person, the person, the emotional impact that games can have, right? If people are okay with the concept of you can go watch a TV show and it can make you cry or it can make you angry, um, being invested in a role playing game that can do the very same thing, that you should also be mindful that these things can have these sort of impacts. But no, I wish North American friends would would be more open to the emotions and the feelings and just the energy that Latin American players tend to have. Also, the idea that their fantasy gaming doesn't have to be Eurocentric. Be engaged in other cultures and other mythos. Um, Learn about things that are going to be new and interesting. Learn all the gods from the Aztecs. Learn all the gods from the various tribes of Peru. You know what I mean, and the different spiritual concepts. Bring that to your role play, um, and you'll learn something, and it'll be enriching. Right? It doesn't just have to be very Eurocentric. And then on the flip side, um, for my North American friends, they tend to approach the hobby very much like back in the days, like it's a war game, right? You've got some role play, you've got the people who are very,
Yep.
emotional and stuff, but you've also got the people who have learned the game and the hobby through the lens of its traditional. This is a war game simulator. We're here to fill our token fantasy, but still be good guy, bad guy. The sort of mechanical approach, right?
Yep.
We can play, and it doesn't have to be um, mechanical. It just you can be different. Yeah. Is that the sort of answers are you looking at, or?
It is your answer. Okay, from my side, yes. I understand what you said. I think Latin American players or people in general should get a little bit more into indoor activities, so more people will be comfy getting into these kind of games. Reading the books. I don't know, like how much North American people are really into reading the books and fully getting into the system. Because in South America, it's like, okay, I play a couple of times, I get the rules, I understand things, I'm gonna nail it. And people don't read anything. So yeah,
Yeah, but that's. I feel like that's more of an individual um, issue to tackle than cultural. Do you think that's cultural though?
I mean, it is pretty constant on our cities. So I don't know if it's cultural or it was just, or maybe it is just the
Because
city.
I know that's a common complaint a lot of people have, that read the rules, know your character. I would say that's a traditional um, friction point in any role playing game, right? And that's why there's role playing games that are only like one page in system length, because
Okay,
people want simple stuff.
okay, but beyond that, be more collaborative. Because in South America, everybody it is pretty much every guy for himself, or every woman for herself. So there is a lack of community. I mean, we have a community, but I don't really see it, helping each other or like everybody being active, building the thing. For example, for the heralds, we are like, like I don't know, like 7 guys and a woman. So yeah, that's the thing. And another thing that I figured out that we didn't mention, and I figured out, you know, from maybe when we started talking to now, is that North America has become more open-minded with people. Yes, let's say South American geeks and role players are, not the more common kind of person you will find there, but they have certain ingrained ideas, and they should be more open-minded to certain minorities. I have seen, for example, that many people that are creating content, South American people, are like really active within the, say, the Twitter community, are not the common people within, the big, in-store communities. So, and that is something that North America has, it is more welcoming to everybody. So Latin America should unlearn certain things and really be more open to everybody within their context. And now the Eurocentric thing, that's a whole thing for another video because
Yeah.
yeah, Latin Americans, at least in Colombia, are really Eurocentric. You have even people that don't play in Latin America. They don't want to play and they just go to the States or to Europe. And Europe, well, there is certain like pride in the culture. So, for example, you have Aquelarre, which is a Spanish game, really, historically plays within Spain. The Dark Eye, for example, which is a German RPG, it is really German. You go to Trudvang, it is super Swedish and Scandinavian. So, I mean, I know there are some settings and some games that have really amazing, say, African contexts. The Southlands from Midgard, Gold Press, amazing part of the world. But yeah, I mean, going beyond the Eurocentrism of things, that's a whole different matter.
Yeah, on that aspect, I totally agree with the open-minded side of things because, for example, what I do when I'm creating an entire new session is that I have the number 195. That's the total number of countries in the world. So I tell somebody, just roll the dice, roll the die for me. Oh, what is that for? Just do it. He does it. Okay, we're going to have the session on this country. So that gives me the option to actually read about that country. What are the cultures, history, characters, customs, and everything. So that enriches my story or my knowledge about a whole different culture than just staying, like you're saying, Eurocentric or North American centered type of scenarios, because that's what, in the case of World Gardens, that Europe is everything and North America is now the center of it.
Yep.
But you're forgetting, for example, I run a small session in Cyprus. So I had to actually learn what was the conflict between the Greeks and the Turks, the Turkish people. So it was an entirely new concept. I actually had to learn the layout of the land. So doing that exercise whenever you're going to create a new story, it will allow you to be more open-minded because you are going to actually know about that culture, how they behave.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that. Um, there is a really big world out there with a lot more history and lore than we can sit down and just pull out of our heads in a blank space. So
Yeah, big time. For example, try to think of a small session, like one or two shot, set up in New Zealand and all the Micronesian islands, so you can see a whole different culture of what might be going on there. You got the island of Samoa, for example. That's a whole totally different culture with totally different beliefs. how people behave. Tattoos meaning a lot for them, warriors and all of that. So, I mean, open up,
I had
open up.
a I had an interesting conversation recently, kind of on this track the other night with some of my players, where when somebody used the word vampire, right, and they're like, "It's a vampire," and then everyone jumped on understanding what they thought was a vampire, right? And it was very Eurocentric, very Bram Stoker's Dracula and stuff like that.
Yep.
But in the notes, we had chosen the vampire was going to be very Japanese in style, right? It was going to be more based on that headless, flying, sort of demon creature. So everyone had already filled their heads, and it was like certain concepts and creatures just they are different around the world. They don't have the same um, parameters, right? So the
Yep.
more you explore, the more you can build from in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for example, regarding something of culture that I saw on a TikTok once, you know, today or yesterday, regarding say the colonization of the Americas. So like you have this idea, the colonizers, bringing culture to natives and all that, and you're saying, okay, so what if you let the natives develop the culture and say match Europe with technology, or you just establish trade routes and let them develop with some like knick-knack, you get steel, you get something new technology, you get to learn things you didn't, but your culture is respected. So how do you develop that? Because history didn't allow for that development. You don't have a base point to know how it happened. And we can talk about, say, for example, the word barbarian, which comes from the the Babar people. I think that's what they are called, which is offensive actually. So how do barbarians call themselves? Halflings have a name within D&D lore, because halfling they don't call themselves that. So yeah, the possibilities are endless. Little things you just have to look.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, so oh yeah, okay. So to finish now, because I think this video has been quite long. If you would like to give us an example of your storytelling technique, just like describe something, a storytell like a little thing. I don't know. Uh, for people to see, your
Oh
20, 20,
goodness, put me
25
on the
years of
spot.
experience.
Put me on the spot.
Okay,
So
okay. I have an idea. There is an exercise I saw. Maybe you want to run it. Describe to us and the people watching dark and gloomy forest without using the words dark and gloomy.
a dark and gloomy
That's a nice one.
forest
That's a nice one,
that is
actually.
Yeah,
not
yeah. I've been trying
good
to I saw it. I
for.
want to come up with more of those ideas. I think it's an amazing exercise.
Actually, there's a card game that I picked up from when I worked at the game store called Once Upon a Time, and it's just a series of
Oh, you
action.
have that. I want to play that game.
Oh, it's so good, so good. I recommend to all DMs to play that style of game where it's cue cards with sort of just nudging you to build stories and then rotating turns and so forth. But if I was to try to describe a dark and gloomy forest, right, I would. And this is obviously off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
I'm a world builder. I like sitting down, drawing maps, creating concepts, comparing notes and so forth, writing things down.
No, I get it. I get it. I spent like 2 hours coming up with like two sword names. No, no, no shit. Like for real.
I would probably go around this task by saying to my players, uh, "Your cart it creaks forward along the dirt road. The forest ahead of you is now the last obstacle in your journey before you arrive at Estral, the village that you expect salvation, supplies, and the opportunity to speak to the druid. However, the sun is dipping down low, the twilight is coming upon you, the light is now dim, the fog is starting to build up as the moisture in the air builds for the night. As you travel through this forest, it's difficult for you to see all the deep, dark shadows breaking out from behind the trees, just stretching out like spears across your path. You get an ill feeling. Something is wrong. Something is out of place. It fills you with this sort of unease. You get the back of your hair, the hairs on the back of your neck just starting to dance a little. What do you do? What are your priorities? How do you survive?
Okay.
My God, that's it. That's experience right there. You don't improvise that.
Yeah, you
That
you
was
you
amazing,
you did say
man.
dark ones, but it was like dark shadows, so gonna let it fly.
Oh,
Okay.
did I say dark?
Yeah, you said dark shadows.
Oh, no, you would have gotten me because I'm trying to start. Yeah, no, I should have said something like deep shadows then, or the intense shadows wrap around you, right, as they smother the light. That's what I like, having the opportunity to say things once or twice before. I'm big on prep time,
Oh,
right? So
okay. So people, thanks for coming. We upload videos every month on the second week of the month. Hope you like our guests. If there is any sort of theme you want us to discuss, we will look for guests for you. Just comment below. And in the middle of this deep forest, where the elven summoner discussed for quite a while, a couple hours with the Guildmaster, out of the abnormal and bent wood, some adventurers, tired, scared, trembling, come out. That part is in the middle of their journey, and they just step right into the conversation we're having. So I guess, I'm going to close the portal now. Again, thank you for coming, and bye bye.
take
Bye
care,
bye. Thank you.
everybody. Thank you.